Hello and welcome back to the One United podcast. I'm joined as ever by Henry. Henry, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Have we
Good,
lost?
good. I think we've lost him already. I think we should have Dubois coming on, a Chelsea fan. He's back now. He's back now. So yeah, I'm pleased to welcome Dubois onto the podcast. Obviously a Chelsea fan. Going to discuss this yesterday's game with us. Dubois, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you guys for having me on. Interested to talk about the game which happened yesterday, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll dive straight into it then. Obviously, we were just on just before you came on, so we know Henry's thoughts on the game. So, sort of from a Chelsea perspective, what are your sort of thoughts on the game?
Well, to be honest, I think at the end of the day, the result was probably. I think both teams would be happy with a point. I mean, if you look at the lineups before the game, I think Chelsea fans are probably a bit more expectant. And I don't know. I think comparing both situations, I think obviously both teams would have probably wanted to win more in the sense that obviously Manchester United's home form this season has been uncharacteristically poor. And Chelsea, I mean, there's growing toxicity in our fan base at the moment. So I think, both teams had, expectations to win, but I think at the end of the day, both teams will settle for a point. I mean, if either team had lost, I think there'd have been a big meltdown on the timeline. So I think I'm not exactly pleased with the draw, but I think, we'll take it. It'll do.
Yeah, just sort of building on what you were saying then, obviously, I think both teams were trying to avoid a loss, and that was very obvious from the way that they both set out. Now, how do you think Chelsea, how well do you think Chelsea set up, with the game plan, and are you happy with it? And if you're not, then how differently do you think they should have set up?
To be honest, I'm not a massive fan of the way we set up. Like, usually we're not, we don't go through at the back. I mean, although it's not the end of the world, I think I prefer because I know we've used this setup last season a few times, especially at the last game of the season against Wolves. We used it, and it was quite successful. I thought we played quite well in it, but I'm not sure. It just didn't link up in attack. Defensively, yeah, we were strong, and I think one thing that Chelsea fans haven't sort of grasped, not all Chelsea fans, I know there definitely is some of them, but considering we've been leaking goals so much, especially at the start of the season, 3 to West Brom, 3 to Southampton, I think what we needed was sort of defensive stability, and that is what we had. And that's not something we're used to. So I think that's a positive. So in that sense, I think the way we set up, I was pleased with that. But I think, attacking wise, we didn't really have much to show for it, especially with our attacking options that we used, who, I think you'd expect to do more. And I think a big reason for that is I've been quite strong on this on Twitter when I've tweeted about it. I think, a big reason was because, we failed to utilise Giroud. I'm a massive advocate for Giroud and the way he plays on the timeline. And I think, if he had started, our attack might have had a focal point, which might have, created better opportunities for us. But apart from that, I'd say to summarise, I was pleased with our defensive sort of stability, but, I think we still need to work on our link-up play up front.
Yeah, that's something that was interesting, sort of watching the game, because I was definitely, I don't know about you, Henry, but definitely going into the game, I was very worried about this Chelsea attack, especially, sort of the calibre of players that you started. I was expecting a lot more from Werner and Havertz. Now, Henry, how surprised were you by sort of how, they were dangerous at times, but going forward, Chelsea sort of offered very little for large periods of the game?
Yeah, well, as I said before, I wasn't really that surprised at that. The kind of link between midfield and attack wasn't really there for me. But there again, you have a threat in Werner and Havertz and Pulisic at the end of the day, because they can attack and they're quick, and in transition they're really good. But yeah, I didn't see anything to suggest to me that they were gonna win the game yesterday. But yeah, I mean, I would have thought it would be a bit more frustrating for Chelsea fans, considering that you've got that front three, but you've got no link between them. I think maybe changed it towards the end if you wanted a different result, and bringing Kovacic on or whoever was on the bench. Mount was a good idea to bring on, but maybe not for one of the front three. But yeah, I'm not actually that surprised that there was no real kind of service and quality there.
it definitely came as a sort of a surprise to me as well. We'll bring this comment up before I come back to you, Dubois. Now, it's saying we played with a back three to deal with United counters, and I think that worked very well. I think you sat off as well, stop that potential for our counter. Now, it was a big clean sheet for this Chelsea defence. It's looked pretty suspect for I think going on 18 months now. Now, how much will a clean sheet away to Old Trafford sort of boost this defence, especially with their confidence?
Yeah, I think it will do wonders for the sort of the confidence in the defence, which, like you said, we haven't looked settled for a long time now since Sarri arrived. And especially like away Old Trafford, it's never an easy place, like I said before. And I think what's good is for us, or for our point of view, is that we've come to consecutive clean sheets once against a very, very good Sevilla side, who have lost only twice since February, I think, and including some big teams, they've failed to. I mean, they've managed to keep quiet. So I think, like you said, yeah, it's good for our confidence. And there seems to be like a bit of momentum now building, especially in the back line. I think Thiago Silva looked really good, and especially in Mendy in goal, because if we had Kepa, I definitely think we could have seen a similar scoreline to last season. I think he made some big saves, which I think every Chelsea fan can agree that Kepa would not have made. It's sort of those situations where he just stands still and the ball goes into the back of the net.
Yeah, Mendy definitely was a difference maker. But you mentioned Thiago Silva there as well. Now, I think he had an incredible game, really. He kept Rashford quiet. He kept Cavani quiet when he came on as well. Now, do you think the system really helped him to settle in? Because obviously, I think you played a 4 at the back against West Brom, and he really seemed to struggle. So do you think a 3 at the back is the way to go forward to sort of accommodate a defender like Thiago Silva? Because we've seen the impact he has on that defence. So I think he's definitely a player you need to sort of force into the team if you can.
Yeah, I mean, with Thiago Silva, I think the game against West Brom, he was playing left centre back, which I think a lot of people noticed from the Chelsea perspective, which he's not really used to. I think he for PSG, he's always played right centre back, and I think the coaching staff themselves noticed that, and he proceeded to play right centre back for the games afterwards in the 4 at the back formation, which he did quite well in. But in terms of the system he played in yesterday, he did look really good. I thought, especially like you mentioned, Rashford and Cavani. I think when Cavani came on, instant impact. I thought he was going to score his first touch, but he kept Cavani quiet, which I think is quite a big achievement considering how dangerous he looked on the night. I guess the 3 at the back, it seemed to suit him. I'm not sure we're going to stick with it. That's the only thing. I think for games like this where Lampard sees that a change of formation would work, or against like we've used 3 at the back against Wolves and teams like that, he might set up similarly. But I don't think it's going to be a formation we'll use, but mainly because we rarely use it, and I think Thiago Silva, like you mentioned, I think he can settle down in the 4 at the back like he has with PSG and he has before today. I think that one slip up against West Brom was purely down to the fact he was playing sort of in an unfamiliar position, I'd say.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. Now, obviously, we mentioned it's a huge clean sheet for Chelsea, but that's 2-0 draws on the bounce now, which, it's good for the Chelsea backline, but, you're going from sort of games that finish 3-3 to games that finish 0-0. So is there an argument that, you're yet to find that balance between defence and attack where you can keep clean sheets, but also, go ahead and, actually put the ball in the back of the net at the other end as well?
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. I think many people would see that, especially in the Chelsea fan base, as a negative, but I have a different take on it. I think, yes, it's you can see inconsistencies if we're going from 3-3s to 0-0s, but I think at sort of after that 3-3 Southampton game, I think the main thing that everyone was talking about was how weak our defense is and how leaky we are at the back. But I think it shows progress in a way. Like, yes, we need a balance, like you said, but that balance will come. I think we needed to focus on stop conceding goals as much as we had, and I think we've sort of started to do that. We were showing signs that we're improving. The balance, I do think, will come because the more time players that spend playing and linking up and creating partnerships on the pitch, I think our attacking flow will come. But at the moment, it's about finding balance. You're right, and but I think we're moving in the right direction, and I think a lot of people are sort of overlooking the fact that at the end of the day, it's Sevilla and Manchester United. It's not games where you'd expect a clear winner in a sense.
It's definitely a good point. Like you say, I think against we set up very very well defensively as well. I think our defenders were very comfortable. So the two tough teams, I think, it should be something to worry about for Chelsea. I don't know about you, Henry, but going forward when they come up against these smaller teams, I don't think they'll really have a problem with attacking because we saw them. They did look dangerous on a couple of occasions against United, and they could have very easily taken the lead a couple of times, especially if the finishing was a bit better. So, how do you think they find that balance between defence and attack if it is sort of something that they should be worried about?
Well, I think you obviously just don't go with a back five. I think you go with probably 4-3-3. I think that's the best solution. And Ziyech can play as a 10. He has before with Ajax, or you play Mount in there. That side is definitely good enough to get obviously top four and to get far in the Champions League. But again, it's finding that balance against the big sides, I'd say. Against the lower sides, I mean, I expected you guys to come out and absolutely batter us, but it just didn't work out that way. And for Chelsea defenders, when you set up against Dan James and Juan Mata with a back five, I think I thought you guys would be a bit more disappointed, especially considering you don't even have to defend against Dan James. You just let him run and he'll just do the rest. He'll just run it out of play and give you a goal kick. So I wouldn't even be concerned about those guys. So I'm surprised that at half time there wasn't a change because Solskjaer won't change it until like 60, 65 minutes in anyway. So there was definitely not a no threat from us.
Yeah, I think that just to sort of build on that, I'll come to you, Dubois. Obviously, United fans were very disappointed with the lineup that we put out. Now, obviously you would have looked at the lineup beforehand. Did that sort of boost your confidence in the game, seeing that we especially given the result we got against PSG, we then reverted back to the team that beat Newcastle. Sort of, what were your feelings towards that going into the game anyway?
Yeah, I think I can speak for most Chelsea fans. I think when we saw the lineup for Manchester United, it was a bit of a surprise because obviously you'd gone to PSG and pulled off a very good result and used a team that that we expected to be similar to what you'd used yesterday. But I mean, have a look at mentioned earlier, we're seeing Dan James, we're seeing Mata, which again, no disrespect to Mata, but it's a team that when we saw it, on paper we should have won the game. I think there's no denying that, and I think Chelsea fans, if you look at it from that perspective, that we're disappointed. We didn't do more, and we set up perhaps with 3 at the back against an attack which wasn't as threatening as it could have been if it was a different lineup put out. But again, I think the reason for that, I guess, maybe was how maybe Lampard, he's realised that we need to be more cautious because of our record of conceding goals isn't very good, and I think he probably expected a Manchester United attack which was more potent than it was. I think your bench, itself could have probably given our defence more of a challenge, but it's a tough one because all this attacking threat that we have, I think, was at the end of the day, credit has to be given to your defence as well. I mean, apart from the Maguire incident, which I'm sure you'll go into in a bit, but I thought Lindelof had a really, really good game, and Wan-Bissaka I thought was excellent, really, because all those balls we were trying to play him through balls, he was always alert to them, and he dealt with everything really well. So I think credit has to be given to the defence as well, the viewers.
Yeah, I think we were definitely surprised with how well the defence played as well. I don't think they were really tested as much as they could have been, but they held their own a lot, and we'll definitely come back to that Maguire incident. But going for the Chelsea setup, obviously we spoke about Giroud earlier, but looking back in hindsight, how would you have set them up any differently? Both sort of in terms of personnel and in terms of tactics.
To be honest, I'm a bit surprised that Lampard hasn't opted to play Giroud alongside Werner. I mean, it's something I've been quite strong on. I think, especially with Werner at Leipzig, he was playing with Poulsen up front, and Poulsen's that sort of profile that Giroud has. And obviously, I think Giroud does that role, to another level. But, that's not something we've seen, and that's something I think might have worked. I feel like if we were going to set up the way we were, I think sort of a 2 up front formation, similar to what Werner's played at Leipzig with Giroud and then maybe having runners in behind, so you have like the Pulisic or Ziyech Havertz / Mount running in behind, and I think that's the formation we used a bit last season. It worked really well. Like, and that's why I'm really surprised. Like, for example, against Spurs last season, we used Giroud as a focal point and had Mount running in behind him. I think Barkley as well that day. And, we put in a really good performance. We did it against Wolves. Similar result, in a must-win game. So I think I'm very, very surprised we haven't utilised that more. And I think, having that focal point has shown results for us. And, when someone like Giroud, he's got 8 goals in his last 10 Premier League starts, and now he's been frozen out of the squad completely, it baffles me a bit. And that's one thing I would probably change about yesterday is, at least if he's not going to start, definitely change it earlier, because we were, getting crosses in, Reece James, Chilwell, etc. But there's no one in the box. And then when you have Giroud on the bench, sitting as a third choice, it baffled me completely. So I think that's one thing I'd have changed.
Yeah, it's definitely something to talk about. I'll come to you, Henry, because Giroud absolutely tore us apart in the FA Cup semi-final last year. He was Chelsea's main threat, and we just didn't really know how to deal with him. Now, did it come as a relief to see you to see him not on the starting 11?
To be honest, not really. I mean, yeah, I guess if he would have came on a little bit kind of later, I'd have been a bit more fearful. That's when teams start to tire, and that's when he gets little gaps, and if he's got crosses in the box especially from a back five, then from those 2 wing backs, then he's doing well. But yeah, I mean, I'm so shocked. One thing I'm shocked about is Tammy Abraham. I know he was your top scorer last year, but, and this is being a little bit harsh, but he is shit. I just don't think he's very good. When he comes on, he doesn't seem to have an impact. He takes I'd say 5 or 6 chances. He's a little bit like a Sterling, like a worse version of Sterling at times. He takes 5 or 6 shots before he hits the back of the net. And Giroud is a born finisher. That's what he does, and that's what he's good at. And but to be honest, I was a little bit fearful at the start because I didn't quite know how it would go, whether Jorginho would be able to bridge that gap to the attack. And if Werner's one-on-one with Maguire, then we're in trouble because we've got, as I've mentioned before, someone that turns like a dump truck. So he's borderline impossible to deal with when he's quick, Werner. So I'd say it's just, I can't really say much about the Chelsea side. I don't know that much, but I wasn't that, disappointed that Giroud didn't start.
That's fair enough. I think I can't agree with you on the Tammy Abraham is shit. I think there's definitely places he can improve, but he offers a lot to that Chelsea team. But coming back to you then, Dubois, just the last thing about Chelsea's sort of team setup. Obviously, Jorginho, I think he has been chosen over Kovacic quite a few times this season now. Were you surprised to see that? And sort of, if you were in charge, would you have liked to see Kovacic in that team? Because to me, he's one of your real underlying threats. He always seems to have a good game against United.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have. I think Chelsea fans would probably agree with this. It's actually Kante that I think Chelsea fans would prefer to see on the bench ahead of Kovacic, and that might surprise you. I'm not sure, but it's sort of in that pivot. If we're playing them in the pivot, I think Kovacic Jorginho has been a really, really proven partnership. When they play together, there's always that connection. And defensively we miss out without Kante, but Kante has not looked 100% for a few games now, and it's not here to say that he's finished. I don't think he's finished at all, but I think at this moment he needs time, time away, time on the bench, because we have a player of the year on the bench, Kovacic, who, like you said, he does do really well, and I think what we miss the most is his ball progression and his ability to beat the press. I think he's that's his role, and he's very, very good at it. And I think that's one of the main reasons he got our player of the year, because of how well he, his ball progression, press resistant, and then setting up attacks. So I would have said Jorginho and Kovacic. I think Jorginho, he dictates the play quite well. And it's something that I think he did quite well yesterday. But I felt like it was a bit disjointed with Kante. There was no real partnership in that midfield. That's. I think if anything was to change in the future, I think Chelsea fans would agree that Jorginho Kovacic is the way forward at the moment.
Yeah, they're definitely building a bit of a partnership from what I can see anyway. Obviously, I don't watch Chelsea extensively, but they're definitely sort of one of the better midfield pairings in the Premier League now. Yeah, we'll go back to that Maguire penalty incident then. Obviously, in my opinion, it should have been given. I think it was as stonewall as you can see. But sort of from a Chelsea fan point of view, what are your opinions on the decision?
It's a bit baffling, really. I mean, I think most people, I think universally, it's agreed that was a penalty. It's one which I think it's not the fact. I mean, I know there's situations in every game where stuff like this is not given or not even looked at. But I think it's more to do with how inconsistent it is, because then, a couple of minutes later you have one in our box, which, I think it could have gone either way. Personally, I don't think it was a penalty for United in that situation, but, it was looked at, and I think that was the right thing. It had to be looked at. But then you look at the Maguire one and it wasn't even looked at. So I just don't understand. And, you have the monitor on the side for what reason if it's not being looked at in situations like this. So I think, Chelsea fans are obviously annoyed about it, because I think it was a stonewall pen as well. But it's more to do with how inconsistent VAR is. I mean, Maguire got away with one against Batshuayi last season. I guess that wasn't as clear-cut, and some people have had mixed opinions on it. But it is another one which I think VAR has to, I don't know, it's just too inconsistent at the moment, because things which are being checked perhaps shouldn't not as potent as the ones which haven't been, and it's just confusing at the moment, because I know you can never be 100% right in situations like this with VAR. It's never going to be 100% right, but when it's a stonewall as that, at least have it checked. I'd say I think that was the most annoying thing.
Yeah, I think in my opinion it was stonewall. Now, Henry, we briefly spoke about this sort of half an hour ago, but do you want to just go back over how you feel about the penalty?
Well, as I said, we see holding in the box a lot. I'm not going to say it wasn't a penalty, because I'll go on record now and say I think it was. But I think if that was given, then it's this whole thing about contact in the box. What contact gives a penalty, what doesn't. So, as you said, Dubois, the other one with Thiago Silva could have gone either way. Where he made contact with Rashford, and that's that's not up for debate. That is what happened. So the Maguire one was, but I think if that one was, then I guess you've got to look at the other one and say, if it's contact, and if it wasn't much contact, but it's still contact, then maybe it should have been a penalty. So, but at the end of the day, the VAR consistency is shocking at the moment, and I know people call United Varchester United, which at the end of the day fans can do, but it comes down to, at the end of the day, United aren't making those decisions, and we've had some given against us. We've had some given for us. The ones that are given for us are, although people say, again, we get a lot of penalties, then I always say just don't foul our players in the box. So, but yeah, the one with Maguire was, but I'm not sure. Probably the one with Thiago Silva probably was.
That's fair enough. I don't think John agrees with you. I think, because I was obviously good mates with John, and we were talking about it. He didn't think that there were any real wrong decisions in the game, which is fair enough. Now, obviously, I'll come to you, Dubois. Obviously, a 0-0 draw at Old Trafford for Chelsea is a good result. I think that's fair to say. As big as a club of Chelsea are, you can't be disappointed with a 0-0 draw at Old Trafford. But given how we were absolutely embarrassed by Spurs at home, and given the context, really, do you think it's a better result for Frank Lampard or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer yesterday?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, it is Old Trafford, and like I said earlier, we haven't won there since 2013. It's not a place where we come and expect to pick up 3 points every time we play. But then again, like Spurs last time, and I think not just Spurs, I think United haven't looked themselves at home this season. I'm not sure the reason is, but it seems to be a place where I don't know what's going on, but you haven't performed at home as well as you have away. So again, it's a hard one to say who was better off. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a big result midweek, and against PSG, and then you come into against Chelsea. I think if you'd looked at this fixture, say 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and you see Manchester United's run, I'm pretty sure PSG was the start of a very hard run for you guys. I think a lot of people on the timeline and Twitter, a lot of talk was like, is Solskjaer going to last after PSG is even going to be in charge for Chelsea? And I saw a lot of that from Manchester United fans on Twitter. So I mean, you've picked up a win against PSG and then a draw against us, and then if you look at the teams, I think you've put into context. I think it's a good result for Ollie in the sense that he's. I don't think many fans, especially if you look at the team that was put out from both teams, I think Ollie will be pleased. I'm not sure it's a good result for either team because at the end of the day, big clubs you expect to win, and in games like this, people want to see goals and entertainment, which I think both teams didn't set up to. But I don't know. I think Ollie probably edged it in terms of, with the result. I mean, if you put into context your home form, considering PSG, I think Ollie edges it. But for Lampard, I think it was needed in the sense that, we didn't concede 4 or 5 goals, which could have happened easily away at Old Trafford like last season. So I think it was still a positive result for Lampard, for himself, and for Chelsea's defensive progress. But, it's a close one. But I think Ollie might edge it based on, if you put into context the lineups, PSG midweek and, previous statements about it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one to talk about. Just sort of while we're on the topic of Ole and Lampard, I'll bring up a comment that we got earlier, which was basically saying, is it time that United and Chelsea sort of get better managers to compete with the rest of the top 6? Now, just judging based on purely on your Twitter icon, you're a big Lampard fan, I'm assuming. So, what do you sort of have to say about things like that, where the suggestions that Lampard isn't a good enough manager for a club of Chelsea's size?
Yeah, look, I think. If you put it into context, you look at Chelsea, Manchester United. In the past, you've had like Sir Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho. It's pretty obvious. It's a massive downgrade from standards in the past. Like, that's 100%. I agree with that. And Lampard is someone. Yeah, I'm backing Lampard at the moment. I'm Lampard in, but he's not immune to criticism. I think that's important to know. And I personally think he needs to be given time. I think with Chelsea fans in particular, and Chelsea as a club recently, we're built on instant success at the moment. Since Roman arrived, it's been instant success. For managers doing well, his job isn't safe, and that's not a culture that other teams have used. And so, for example, like Liverpool with Klopp, in his first season, he didn't exactly do very well. He had to work with what he had. He spent on players, and it took 3, 4, 5 years for his team to become Premier League champions and Champions League winners. So I think that's sort of the target for Chelsea at the moment, because Lampard's been backed heavily in the market, and it's clearly a long-term project. That's why I think Chelsea fans are being way too reactionary about it. Those who want Lampard out. So I think at the moment, he's learning, and he needs to learn quickly, because as a big club, you don't have a lot of time to just say that you're learning. But I think it's more of a long-term project. That's why I'm not, I don't entertain debates which say that, not debates, but people that are going to, call for his head this soon. I think, it's a long-term project. And with Ollie, like the comment mentioned, both teams, I don't know. I think it's a difficult, because I'm not massive. I don't like, in Manchester United's fan base, I don't pay too much attention to it outside of when we're playing each other. But I think there's times where he'll get results which look good on paper, like PSG. You're winning away at PSG, and you think, is he the right man for the job? It seems very inconsistent. And then there's games where you're losing to teams that you probably shouldn't, like Spurs, that result 6-1. I mean, then you're thinking, oh, is Ollie the right man for the job? So it's quite bipolar. I'm not sure where it stands for Manchester United, but that was my view on Lampard.
Yeah, I'll come to you in a second, Henry, about your sort of opinion on Ole, because it's something that we talk about quite frequently. But just to build on a point you made, Dubois, then there's all this talk of a long-term project with Lampard, and I think he's sort of given last season especially, sort of justified that talk. But he spent a lot of money this summer, and what do you think sort of the bare minimum he needs to achieve this season to be given time to build this project?
Well, one thing's for certain, he's not going to get away with finishing below where we finished last season. I think top 4 is a must. Again, I think, suppose we finish 4th. I mean, I don't think many Chelsea fans would be happy with that, but I think as long as we've bridged the gap, cut the gap between the top, I think as long as we're showing progress in the league, I mean, I think many Chelsea fans probably would expect us or want us to finish like top 3. And in terms of domestically, I think a lot of Chelsea fans, bare minimum, maybe one of the domestic trophies. I mean, you're looking at the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup. I mean, going one further than last season. Obviously, we lost to Arsenal in the FA Cup final, so I guess that would show progress. And then I think in Europe, that will be the biggest test for us. I think many Chelsea fans might judge Lampard more on our European, say we get top four. I think sort of the defining point might be how well we do in Europe. I mean, obviously we got blown away by Bayern last time, but we've been handed a pretty decent group, one where we expect to go through quite comfortably. So, perhaps reaching the quarterfinals, semi-finals, it might have to be sort of bench as a minimum for us.
Well, is there a talk? Obviously, it's a very disjointed league this season. Obviously, Van Dijk's injury and City aren't up to scratch either so far. Is there a possibility that if this team gels quicker than we expect, they could possibly go on to win this league this year?
I'm not going to sit here and say that we could win the league. I think it's too soon. I think we've spent a lot of money. There's no denying that. But I don't know. I don't think if we gel in time, which I don't see it happening, I think it'll take a bit longer than many are expecting. Then there's a chance we'll be in with a shout, but I don't think it will be a clear-cut win for the league this season at all for whoever it is. I mean, you're looking at teams like Everton they spent wisely. I think they didn't overspend or spend on too many players to integrate at once, and they're high-flying. Like West Ham are doing really well. There's teams which are and I don't think we're going to have a Leicester-esque title-winning season, but there's teams that you don't expect to do as well are doing well, and teams like big sides are dropping points. So it's going to be a difficult one. But with regards to Chelsea's title race, I think this season might be a bit too soon to sort of be champions. Next season, however, if Lampard's in charge next season, I think a lot of Chelsea fans will be very disappointed if we aren't challenging or even winning the league next season, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. He's obviously he's a manager with ability, that's clear to see, and now he's a manager who's been backed as well. So, from a Chelsea point of view, you've got to hope he can sort of combine the two and get some real success. Now, just going back to the question, Henry, obviously we talk about it a lot, so I'm obviously pretty familiar with your opinion. But do United need a better manager, just briefly, in order to take them up to the top of the league, or is every manager in the world destined to fail under this board?
Well, I mean, yes, we do need a new manager, and I know United fans will jump on me for this. And we've just beaten PSG away, which is fair enough, but they had a load of players missing. We've got a good draw against Chelsea, which is again fair enough, but tactically there's something not quite there, and he seems to reward players with he beat Newcastle. Okay, we beat Newcastle 4-1. We only played well when we brought on bench players that did that did really well in the game. So and then he goes and starts Dan James and Juan Mata against Chelsea. So there's loyalty and there's stupidity, and I think he borderlines on that sometimes. He seems to get good results against big teams, and that's because we're good on the counter attack. That's it, but we can't break teams down. So we do need a new manager. And as you mentioned about the board, I think you're destined to fail if you're a crap manager under this board. And getting beat 6-1 at home by Spurs, yes, we focused on the board a lot, but the tactics weren't there either. We got completely bitched by a Mourinho side that they gave him some money and he did well. So, but yeah, I don't see Solskjaer as a top manager. I just don't. Other people might disagree and might say, yeah, give him time. Well, sod that. What is it with this whole give him time thing? How much more time does he need? Another 20 years or 15 years? Or am I going to be on my deathbed when they're going, give him time? He's bringing youngsters through. So yeah, nuts to that. Get a good manager in and hopefully watch the club rise, because they'll do. A good manager will do a better job under this board for sure.
Yeah, I think you're probably spot on. As hard as it is to say, Ole's done a good job at United, but he's definitely not the standard that we need. Now, we'll just sort of round off the show by sort of looking forward. Then, obviously, I'll come to you first, Dubois. Chelsea have got. I'd say it's a big game in the Champions League. You're playing Krasnodar, which are probably the weak links in your group, but it's a game that it's crucial that you get 3 points out of. So, how are you feeling sort of leading up to that game, and how do you take what you've seen from United into the game, sort of tactically? How do you set up?
Well, I think every Champions League game is big. Obviously, Krasnodar are a side that I think every Chelsea fan is expecting a victory. Anything less than that, and there's going to be questions on the timeline about Lampard's job again, I guess. So I think winning is the only option for this game. That's not to underestimate them, but I mean, when you spend that much money and you expect to beat sides like Krasnodar, I think what Chelsea fans want to see, and what I want to see in particular, is obviously continue that defensive, resoluteness. So clean sheet, I think, is a must. And then I think what will be interesting, I think more than anything, is not only team selection but how he sets up. So personally, I think minutes for Hudson-Odoi is necessary. I mean, I don't know what it is with Lampard and Hudson-Odoi, but he's going to end up going to a club like Bayern, and I think he'll succeed. He'll be another one of those Salah/De Bruyne stories for me. I think Hudson-Odoi is a lot of talent. We saw that under Sarri in glimpses, and Sarri was criticised for underusing him. But if you're looking back at it now, it looks like Sarri was managing really well. Hudson-Odoi and Loftus-Cheek as well. But so I think it'll be team selection, really, see who's in the fold and who's not, because I think it'll give us a big clue. I think, players like Giroud need to start. Kovacic has to start. So I think it'll be more of an idea to see where Lampard sees his Chelsea team and which players are in his plans and which aren't. And I think at the end of the day, there's no excuses for us not to win. And if we don't, there'll be questions asked. And I think Chelsea fans especially will be very toxic about it. So yeah, I think that's where it leaves us. I think this Manchester United game won't have a massive bearing on it, based on the difference between the two sides of Manchester United and Krasnodar. I think it'll be very one-sided. Hopefully we can win, but I don't think that it'll be as much of a test as Manchester United.
Yeah, that's one thing that I probably should have mentioned earlier as well. But the whole sort of Callum Hudson-Odoi situation now, he's obviously one of the biggest talents in Europe still, despite his lack of game time. But do you think the big money spent this summer has sort of pushed him even further out the door?
See, that's something which many people will say and have said, but I even then I'm not. I don't think that's limiting his opportunities at Chelsea. I'm baffled by it. I know a lot of Chelsea fans are. It's a strange one because you're seeing Mason Mount start on the wing, and he's only played on the wing for us recently, which makes no sense whatsoever. Mason Mount is not a winger, and he doesn't play well on the wing. And naturally, fans' reactions now when they see Mason Mount is, "Oh, he's such a terrible footballer because he doesn't play well." But that's because he's playing out of position, not because he's a bad footballer. Like, if he's playing in midfield, he plays well. But he's been forced out wide, and you have Hudson-Odoi on the bench, not even in the squad. It doesn't add up, and it infuriates many people. And I'm not surprised, because Hudson-Odoi is, like you said, one of the biggest talents in Europe. I wouldn't say he's up with the very elite ones, but maybe that's because he's not been given an opportunity to show that he is. And it is baffling. It really is. And I don't know what there is, because the one time he did get a start, or he did come on, actually, I think it was West Brom. He changed the game for us. Yeah, we didn't beat West Brom, but 3-0 down, Hudson-Odoi comes on. He scores. He looks lively. It's very strange. And I think what is going to happen, he's going to be pushed out in January, or and maybe even to a Premier League club, and he will do very well, because we've seen his talent and we've seen what he can do last season. So for him to be phased out and frozen out of the squad, it baffles me.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one, especially from a neutral point of view, because it's obvious he is a real talent, but he's just not getting the game time. Now, sort of moving on to United, Henry, obviously we've got a big game midweek again at home to Leipzig. Now, how do we approach that game to make sure that we get our first home win of the season?
Don't start Dan James.
Fair enough.
Simple as that. Just don't start him. And then, if you want to win the game, don't start Luke Shaw either. I know he did well defensively against Chelsea, but there's this clip circulating where Bruno Fernandes wants him to overlap, and he just stands there like a fucking lemon. So, yeah, don't start him. I mean, it'd be nice to win it, but in truth, I'm probably more frightened of this game than I am of the PSG game. And that's purely because although they've got, I guess you could say, inferior players, they've got a really good manager in Nagelsmann who he knows his stuff, and he's a He's a smart guy, and they seem to perform well. So yeah, it's going to be a rough game. It'd be nice to see an attacking lineup rather than McTominay and Fred starting in the middle, and maybe even Tuanzebe starting again because he did really well against. People saying those challenges were penalties. Some people on Twitter and stuff, either they're just winding people up or they're just a bit stupid. But yeah, watching someone that has been out for 10 months completely bitch one of the best players in the world is fantastic to see. So yeah, I want to win, but if we start Mata and James behind, Rashford or behind Martial, we're in trouble then.
Yes, it's definitely a good point. I think I just want to see Tuanzebe and Van der Beek. Van der Beek more than anything. What's he got to do to get a start at Old Trafford? It's definitely frustrating, but we'll leave it there then. I think that just about covers everything. Massive thank you to Dubois for joining us. You've been a big help, giving us some really good points. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on, and I really enjoyed the debates we've had.
Sound, and thanks as ever to Henry for coming on. And good luck. As painful as it is to say, good luck to Chelsea in the game against Krasnodar, and hopefully we'll see you before the Leipzig game. So thanks for watching.